Welcome back to TYT Sports. This is a little bit late, but it is a follow-up to the story about LeBron James having the N-word spray painted across his front gate in his Brentwood home in Los Angeles because he did a press conference about 5 or 6 hours after we put up the clip on that story, and it very much changed, not the story itself, but what his words, his messaging was. We found important and wanted to continue having the discussion. So here is that video. It is long, it is about 2 minutes long, but I don't know if I can cut parts out of it without it being really stripped from context. And then we're going to get into, well, first, have a look at that video.
Hi, LeBron. John Tellich, Fox 8. You've always been outspoken about social issues, and it seems that you're kind of in the middle of one. The incident at your home in Los Angeles, do you have any comment on that?
I mean, as I sit here on the eve of, excuse me, on the eve of one of the greatest sporting events that we have in sports, you know, race and what's going on comes again, and on my behalf and my family's behalf. But I mean, I look at it as this. I mean, if this is to shed a light and continue to keep the conversation going on my behalf, then I'm okay with it. You know, my family is safe. At the end of the day, they're safe, and that's the most important. But it just goes to show that that racism will always be a part of the world, a part of America. And, you know, hate, you know, in America, especially for African American, is living every day. And even though that, you know, that it's concealed most of the time, even though people hide their faces and will say things about you, and when they see you, they smile in your face. It's alive every single day. And I think back to Emmett Till's mom, actually. It's kind of one of the first things I thought of. And the reason that she had an open casket is because she wanted to show the world what her son went through as far as a hate crime and, you know, being black in America. So it's like it doesn't, no matter how much money you have, no matter how famous you are, no matter how many people admire you, you know, being black in America is tough, and we got a long way to go, you know, for us as a society and for us as African Americans until we feel equal in America, and you know, but my family is safe, and you know, that's what's important.
And also, there's a response that is being highly debated from Jason Whitlock. And again, unfortunately for this case, it's not a 2-minute video. There was 3 different 10-minute long segments, including a fight with Chris Broussard on Speak for Yourself, I believe the show is called, on Fox Sports, and then another 15-minute long segment on Colin Cowherd's show, but the messaging was just about the same. We're going to start with LeBron James's press conference. Francis, JR, your thoughts on this part of the conference? There was people who were saying he should not have made an analogy to Emmett Till because LeBron James is not in the same socioeconomic class as him. It's something that I thought what LeBron was doing was fair, but I'm also not the opinion.
So does it mean we don't
world.
bring up, should we not bring up anything, to Whitlock's point, should we not bring up anything that any civil rights leader said in the past, because we weren't fighting that struggle? There's a different kind of opposition, there's different kinds of racism, there's different kinds of ways that it manifests itself in our society. So does that mean we don't draw any more comparisons anymore? Everyone loves saying, I have a dream. Oh, shut up, stop saying that. That happened back in the day. So it doesn't, anybody can use whatever they want if it connects to their situation and what it makes them, however it influences them, and however it shapes their opinion. And LeBron was very eloquent, and after what happened to him, and he was worried, particularly which he also pointed out, he was just happy no family was there, no friends or family was at the house, because obviously he doesn't live in LA right now. It's a house. Right. And someone was making a point. They probably also knew, they figured no one was there. I'm just guessing. But the point being is to make their point, he gets to make his. To have a problem with someone's approach to the way they talk about a hate crime that was committed against them and their property, I don't think you have any point to stand on at all. You listen to what they have to say. If you don't agree with it, it's up to you. You can have that too. But you don't get to tell someone what they can and can't bring forward to exhibit their point.
Yeah. I thought LeBron James was, as always, is gracious and humble as he has been consistently in the media. And I think he was very honest. And I think he said a lot of things that, again, resonated with me. But this is another example of whether I get to decide on what I agree or disagree with. I just try to listen as to what he's explaining. I feel like that's the job that I have kind of given myself whenever I approach issues involving race, is listen, try to understand, and then from that form an opinion. And I think one of the things that he said was that this was kind of like a reminder that regardless of how much money you have or what you do with your life, there's still going to be people out there that are going to undermine you simply because of the color of your skin. And that is something that I believe Whitlock did not agree with, because he said, and I may be paraphrasing, but because of the status that he's kind of created for himself and the fantastic career he's made, and the fact that he gets to go to a house that is 10 times the size of most people's, that diminishes the hurt that he probably felt from that word. Like that word is, as I mentioned, is the ugliest word to have ever come out of someone's mouth. Is derogatory towards a specific group of people. And I think that regardless of what you build around yourself, that word is still going to have a deep impact on the person it's directed towards. And it's going to, because someone is of a certain status, it doesn't mean that doesn't have the same impact. Look at Barack Obama. This is a guy that had the most prized job title in the history of the world. Did that prevent him from feeling the impact of racism? The guy was questioned about his legitimacy as an actual United States citizen, and still is to this day. The status and the career that he built around him does not prevent that from happening, because people out there will always undermine. And you have to realize that these are all things that, when you look through the history, these were things that people used to use as excuses for black people being treated as inferior. Or well, maybe if you worked harder and got to a certain status, you'd gain the respect. Or maybe if you did this or you did that. Like, and LeBron James is just reminding people out there that the guy has done everything that you would imagine to be the most successful path to what. Like, he's married his high school sweetheart. He's built an amazing family, raising his kids, and he's a role model still. That's what happens.
One of the things I didn't like so much about the reaction was, for one, the focus on Jason Whitlock. It's the wrong message. And Jason Whitlock has a lot of the time been somebody. I spent about the last 24 hours, which is not an ample enough time, but far too much time reading into what Jason Whitlock has done with his career since 2015 and the Undefeated being started, which was a venture for black voices in the country, for journalism in the country, to bring over a culture-driven, an urban-driven website for ESPN. And Whitlock was tasked with running this. And not just from that, but with how he handles many issues about racism, which I cannot necessarily speak out of any kind of, I'm messing up the word sympathy or empathy here, but I do not have the understanding, as most people do. In this case, why we talk about Whitlock is one of the things I don't like. Because what LeBron James has only done in the NBA, criticizing his actual game aside, has been the picture-perfect example of somebody who was told since he was 16 to be the chosen one, the next greatest role model, legendary athlete in the world, or at least in this country, and done that so to a T. LeBron James doesn't stumble out of clubs. LeBron James doesn't get into fights outside of the arena. LeBron James doesn't take off his shirt and party in Las Vegas. Not that I find anything wrong with those things, but what he does is he's a family man. When people criticize his family, he tells them to take a step back from that because he's protecting his family. So for one, when he brought up this whole idea, and Jason Whitlock's actual words from just part of it, I'll leave you the 25-ish minutes of segments that there have been in the description, because again, it's unfair to really take anything out of context, but this is some of it. I get when I was a young person, people called me a bad name, the N-word, whatever. It hurt my feelings. But did it stop me from rising? Hell no. Did it stop LeBron James? And LeBron's comments about, quote, no matter how rich you are, no matter how famous you are, it's tough being black in America. That is a lie. It is not tough being Oprah Winfrey. It is not tough being LeBron James. And it is not tough being Jason Whitlock. He continues to say, and as I'm paraphrasing now, that racism is a major issue in the country, but it's a major issue if you are poor. If you are rich, then when somebody posts a hate crime on your front door, then it's just disrespectful. And that's where I drew the line of being like, you can't agree with anything Whitlock was saying in this case, regardless your proximity to race and where you grew up, because I've never seen such a clear-cut example of racism.
That's one thing.
And then him trying to take a peg down from
It's one thing that crosses it all. It doesn't matter. It's like a direct misinterpretation, or just, I guess, ignoring exactly what LeBron said. He said it doesn't matter. He didn't say, oh, woe is me, I'm so rich, that's why people hate me. He said it does not matter. And you can't argue that fact, because obviously it didn't matter to the vandals who ran up and spray painted his property. Because it doesn't matter. They didn't put up there, go Warriors. It wasn't based in his success and what he does in his career. It was based in the color of his skin and what they figured what would hit him. Now, I grew up broke as whatever. I'm not going to use curse words. But, and when you get called the word, it didn't bother me then. You get called the word now, it didn't bother me now. So that's me. Yeah. But I'm not going to go tell someone who's rich or poor that however a word makes them feel, it's illegitimate, because that's not my place. I can speak for myself. So speak for yourself, Jason Whitlock. Speak for however things affected you. If it hurt your feelings when you were younger, cool. If it doesn't anymore, cool. And by the way, Oprah Winfrey talks about society. So she should shut up about it, because you used her as an example. She talks about society and how things can be different, and I'm sure she acknowledges that there's a problem with race in our culture. Yeah. So you're gonna tell her to shut up because she's uber rich? She still catches it. So she's not talking about weight gain and how people call her a fat ass her whole life? Should we not talk about that? Because I have no problems with any weight problems my whole life. So if someone calls me a fat ass, it's not gonna bother me. So if someone calls her that, or you that, are you gonna have a problem with it? If you do, I'm not gonna drop your perspective because of it. I'm sorry, he's looking for attention is what I can only come up with, because his argument doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, that's what we were discussing in the kitchen before. I was talking with Francis too. I can't for the life of me figure out, again, maybe I'm not close enough to the situation, but I cannot for the life of me figure out what Whitlock's end game here is. Well, because there's having an opinion, and then there's just, again, doing certain things for attention as a TV personality. And there's a line that gets drawn, and there should be, because unfortunately in today's landscape, the more ridiculous your statements are, the less they are rooted in fact, the better chance you have at signing a multi-million-dollar TV deal. Yeah, and that's what Whitlock eventually got to. And I'm not going to criticize him for getting to that point, but it's just, there's a responsibility. It's why I've always said when it comes to it, when people say, why do you bring in some of these topics to the sports channel? Why do you bring up some of these topics? Like, why do you think that sports journalists as entertainers should be held to the same standard as somebody on a mainstream media? I go, just because sports are a form of entertainment doesn't mean we should hold the people who are talking about them less accountable for what they say than someone on anything, let's say CNN or MSNBC or Fox.
My final point is that I'm not going to sit here and try to work my head around why Jason Whitlock said that, because again, I don't know what he's went through in his life. I don't know. He's probably experienced so many things that I couldn't even contemplate in my life. But I think when you speak in mass like that, and speak because there's money attached to it, then therefore you're not facing hurdles that are put in front of you because of the color of your skin. I'm pretty sure that when you look at the movie entertainment industry, only the last 4 years have you started to see more black directors emerge at the forefront. There's probably a lot of black directors that make a lot of money, but the color of their skin undermines them when it comes to a different scale, whether it's the Oscars or whether it's getting specific roles or whether it's actors. Like, there's always ways that just because it's not maybe the most clear cut in the same form of racism that's directed towards someone in a lower economic status, it's still forms of racism that they're having to face, and the money that is almost, whether they make a certain amount of money or things like that, I don't think that is a means to diminish of what they're facing. It's still
Sometimes
a
it
form of
enhances
prejudice.
it. Sometimes they hate you more because of your accomplishments, and specifically because of the money you make. They're like, how dare this N-word make more money than me?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Speaking of what I was reading, I'll leave it on, I guess, on this, into the Jason Whitlock stuff. Jason Whitlock, when he was running the Undefeated through emails from Greg Howard over at Deadspin, which is a long, long article, but truly fascinating if you want to understand more of how Jason Whitlock is, on record stating that Jason Whitlock running the Undefeated, he told people who felt that maybe if they didn't think Jason Whitlock was a worthy leader, he can find them a white person for them to report to. Actual quotes, actual words. So it's messed up, man. It really is. But I'll leave you on
He's got things to work through.
I'll leave you on the Chris Rock note, a happy note, or at least a funny note, not really a happy note, because Francis brought up the Oscars thing. As he said during his Oscars speech, he goes, it's not fair that there's not as many black men and women nominated for roles. And it's not fair, but it's also not fair that Will Smith got paid $10 million for Wild Wild West. So, comment below, like, favorite, and subscribe to help me figure out why Jason Whitlock gets to have a TV show.